So my name is Trevor Romelski, and my role is lead gameplay designer. So basically anything related to game design on Valorant, I'm part of and interacting on and helping with the delivery and execution of. First and foremost, when I was working on League was already an established game out in the world. So it was a live service, means that we had feedback coming from all players of all different regions. And what's nice about that is when you make a change, really quickly if you made the right decision. The community will tell you, if that was a good idea or not, right? But when you're working on something early on in R&D, is when you make a choice, you don't know for a very long time, sometimes years, if that's ultimately going to be a good choice or not. So there's a lot of challenges there, and you really have to know like who you think your audience is and build things according to that. And you don't really get that validation or that understanding until much later. So that's a pretty big different part of going from live service to development, when we're really early on. But as far as going from like a shooter to a MOBA, I mean, it's very different, right? Like League of Legends is a game, it's a different camera perspective, it's a different range of power sets and the kind of abilities that the characters have. In League, you have a lot of items that change stats and manipulate stats. In a shooter like Valorant, you have very little stat adjustments and everything's very physical. So we really had to reframe how we thought about designing this kind of game compared to League, and the kind of abilities, needing them to be more tactical, really change the kind of execution and what kind of abilities worked and what didn't. And it took a lot of time in development to learn, hey, this is an ability that works really well in tactical space, or hey, this ability is really bad for tactical gameplay. It invalidates, having some foresight about an area, or it removes proactivity when you're thinking in the space. So we had to really problem solve and adjust to the first person space. When I got involved, Valorant was just an idea. It was in a small group of ours heads, and we kind of knew sort of the space we wanted to be in. We wanted to make a shooter, and we wanted to be a competitive game for competitive players first and foremost. That was a top line goal for us. And from that small team, we slowly built up over the years and turned into what you see Valorant is today. And I think generally it was like 3 years of really early prototyping and finding the kind of gameplay we wanted and the art style and all of that. And then 3 years of full production of really getting the game ready, solid, and trying to polish it as much as possible for a live release. So I've kind of, when I joined, it was in a very early ideation phase. And from that point, we moved on to prototyping and then forward from there. A lot of it for us was we wanted to make sure we could playtest the game every day. Even up into this point, we playtest 1 to 2 times a day. And it's really important for us to know how the game's playing, if there's any issues that we're running into. You can see with our dev team, we wanted to make sure that we could understand the game at least at a pretty high level. Obviously not to the level that a lot of players out there already are getting into and how many hours are going in, but at least to some extent we kind of know what's going on when the game comes out. So we did a lot of playtesting, and we ultimately built a prototype to get to that point where we could playtest every day pretty quickly and try to represent the core game loop as fast as possible, so that you could go and playtest a build and see okay, I generally understand what this game's about, what the core gameplay is, how it's supposed to play, how it feels. And then from there, we can build and iterate and change things because we're able to use this baseline that we're playtesting with to inform those decisions. My early memories of just the development on this game and how it was very different, right? Like we tried a lot of different things. We definitely explored in the more action-oriented shooter space where it was less tactical and you had a lot of long engagements where, you were doing extended fire with each other for long periods of time. One of the funny things early on is we hadn't really optimized anything or, and we had this like a little larger open world version of the game than you would see today. and it was so laggy that we're like, chugging around like a PowerPoint presentation at like 3 frames. And that helped us learn really quickly that we had to be smarter about like what we put in the environment, how large the environments are, and using other tech to optimize performance. But over time, like it was always really satisfying to put in a new ability design or change a part of the map and start to genuinely feel like you're having fun. At first it's kind of just part of the job to try this thing. It's like, oh yeah, this thing worked, this thing didn't. It's like kind of like objective analysis. But you eventually get to a point where it really starts being fun and you want to play just because you want to play. And that was like a really memorable moment that was very pivotal for us when we started to understand, hey, this is the general space that we really want to move forward with and we think will be fun. For now, our strategy is we want to focus on Valorant's IP and giving Valorant's IP the room to breathe and be the best thing it can be and unlock its potential. It doesn't mean, of course, that, long term we're not thinking about what that world might look like, or, there's a couple like really small Easter eggs in the game that already have a little bit, but it's not really intended to be anything meaningful in the IP. And long term, we'll assess that. I think there's an interesting opportunities when you think about like skins and those things. But for now, we're definitely focusing on Valorant's IP and making Valorant's IP stand alone and be a enjoyable space to be in and live on its own for a little while. That's a spicy one. Yeah, so I'd say, when we did the Valorant dev team and they were playing in the tournaments, I think that's generally like, us trying to put together and the team themselves deciding like, oh, this is we think like the best 5 on the dev team that can put up the biggest challenge to a bunch of people that are playing the game, early on. And we knew like, we're going to only have a small window to actually compete and we'll be getting owned like in no time. But for the time being, we can go out there and have some fun matches. So I'd say that team in general represents the best players on Valorant by far. It's hard to say like who's exactly the best. I think everyone on that team is better at different things. I think like Volcano's like very good on the strategy side, and tactically getting a big advantage on you when you least expect it. And Xcal is super good at like the team coordination and the timings and using abilities in really clever ways. Nick had all kinds of crazy, labbed out Sova stuff, and his aim's really good. And the rest of the team, they all have different attributes. I think they're all super top, easily the top players on the team. Nobody gets pretty, really close to them. So. We call them like new gameplay mechanics. So, ideally for us, we hope like long term, what we don't want them to feel is like gimmicks, like or like novelty plays. Like if we're going to put something in a map, we want it to have a meaningful purpose in the way you actually play that map. And we hope that long term it plays out as a really enjoyable part of the map and it feels essential to it. If it does feel like novelty and it starts to feel very gimmicky and the depth and gameplay around it kind of wears off and it's not that valuable, then we see that as like a failure of the map and we'd want to change that and adjust it. But in general, we do have the philosophy of, hey, every time we introduce a map, we don't want it to just be moving a bunch of geometry around, right? We want to think about what's the core gameplay hook of the map and how does that inform the layout of the map and the structure of it. And long term, that is our aspiration to continue doing that. And we hope it never ends up feeling like, oh, what's the new, novelty play or gimmick with the map? Like long term, these things should really give it that unique feel and make it feel like it has importance and relevance in the map roster and not just like another map with slightly changed geo or something that ultimately doesn't fundamentally affect how you address the map and how you think about your agent's roster when you draft into it and your strategies on it. we on the dev team are so grateful for all of you that are playing the game and enjoying it. And it's awesome starting to see the game played at more of a tournament level, and we're super excited to see all the teams and the players come up with new strategies and just be blown away by all the creativity and ingenuity of all the players. And even the videos we see all over social media are really exciting. And so we're eternally grateful for everyone who enjoys the game and appreciates playing it. And we want to just continue to make the promise that we're going to continue making the game better every day, listening to feedback. We want Valorant to have a long, healthy life, and we want to continue injecting new things, changing things, keeping the service fun and enjoyable for all of you who we're so glad have decided to join the community and play with us. And it's just seeing the game out there and live and all of you enjoying it is so much fun. And obviously we have a responsibility to continue making sure it's the best it can be every day. So.